It is a profound honour to welcome Dr. Samah Jabr, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, liberation thinker, and one of the fiercest truth tellers of our time. Dr. Jabr is a consultant psychiatrist practicing in Palestine, serving communities in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, and the former head of the mental health unit within the Palestinian Ministry of Health. She is an associate clinical professor of psychiatry and behavioural sciences at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. In addition to her clinical work, Dr. Jabr has dedicated over 2 decades to advocating on behalf of the mental health of the Palestinian people, focusing on victims of torture and trauma. We are so honoured to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. The honour is mine. Pleased to be with you.
Thank you for being here on Two Pals in a Pod. You're in this colony in Australia to talk about and promote your new book and your first book in English, Radiance in Pain and Resilience. Reading your book, we have been struck by the vast limitations of psychology, or let's say, quote unquote, Western psychology and psychiatry, particularly in this moment. It is ill-equipped to deal with or talk about, genocide, war, and displacement. The quote from your book, "But talks and pills can never return a killed child to his parents, an imprisoned father to his kids, or reconstruct a demolished home," is something that struck us, and we wanted to use that, I guess, as an entry point. How does that quote, how does this deficiency reflect, the limitations of clinical psychiatry in the context of structural violence?
I think one of the challenges that became very clear for me working in Palestine is first the theories and the interventions that were developed in the West in times of convenience for people who have individual problems and they don't experience structural violence or oppression. These theories and interventions don't match in our context. They are not suitable for us. And yet, international NGOs working in Palestine ask us to implement evidence-based practice when the evidence is developed in different contexts completely. In addition, we have very small number of staff highly specialized in mental health. So we have to rely on people who can be helpers, but are not necessarily specialized in mental health. They are medical doctors, nurses, teachers, counselors. So we've been flattening the hierarchy and training many others to respond to the very high need of psychological pain and distress presented by Palestinian people in reaction to political violence. Also, the resources that are available are limited. So we have significant contextual differences, and we need to do the necessary work in a different way. And while Western psychiatry and mental health practices consider that the dysfunction is within the individual, we understand very well in Palestine that the pathology, the dysfunction is within the system, is within the political reality. So we strive to help the individuals to survive their reality, but we don't get deceived. We understand that the changes and the transformation need to be done within the system of oppression. A committed mental health professional in Palestine will do the clinical work to help the individual, but will not shy away from advocacy. So in addition, and as an expansion for our commitment to the patient, we need to raise awareness about the reality that is generating pain and distress.
Just to interrogate these frameworks a little further, and I mean, building on that, you actually referred to a term which was coined by Frank Chicane in 1986, continuous traumatic stress, to explain how South Africa's apartheid state impacted children's mental health, and also other sort of well-known psychometric instruments and individualized models, as you call it, of PTSD. You argue that they don't, as you said, account for such feelings. Can you talk us through that, through these sort of technical terms, and building on that, on your hypothesis?
When I refer to Chicane's expression or other expressions coming from Latin America or South Africa or other troubled places, what I get a feeling of validation that we need to find our own terminology that are suitable for us in Palestine. And the terms that can best explain our situation in Palestine come from the framework of historical colonial trauma, where we see that not only masses of individuals in Palestine are targeted, but also the social fabric of the Palestinian people. The trauma we experience in Palestine is not an accidental trauma. It is not a short-term trauma with a clear beginning or a clear end. It is deliberate colonial trauma that is enduring. And it has the intention of breaking the will and agency of individuals, but also spreading mistrust and defeat and internalized sense of inferiority among the Palestinian collective. And this is being done in every possible way, and it is strategic, it is by design. When I think of the events in Gaza, at the beginning of the attack, the massive carpet bombardment, we saw people responding positively and expressing the virtues of the Palestinian community, helping each other, making sure that no one is left under the rubble. They go to rescue the bodies, to get the dead bodies from under the rubble, to give them a dignified burial.
Yes.
So then we saw further attacks, attacking every lifeline, the health system, all the schools, all universities, journalists, one after another, in a serious attempt to attack the resilience of the Palestinian people. And this was even more explicit with the imposition of weaponized starvation.
Yeah.
Starvation is a very malicious way to break the connectedness and the resilience of the community, because we know from other experiments, old experiments of starvation, that the experience of starvation makes people lose and compromise on relationships in expressing the virtues that they have. They become irritable and irritating in the way in they express themselves. Then they lose their critical thinking. So the damage targets the reliance and interdependence between people. People will seek personal survival over the empathy towards each other.
We actually had Dr.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
She's done 3 medical missions to Gaza, and we had her on the show, and she's just returned. And that was what she said. She said she observed a really profound shift in the population. The first 2 times she was there, they were dealing with the bombs mainly. she said with the starvation, what affected her the most was it attacked the social fabric of society because it naturally pulls in this instinct for survival and survival of the fittest and people having to turn on each other to feed their children. And she said that's what broke her the most, witnessing that.
Not just that, but conversely, the way that food is such a important tool that brings us, you know, it is an important part of our identity, our fabric, the way that we come together around food, and to weaponize that so maliciously and use that to undermine one of the things that brings us together, and then to take it to that level. I think for me that's what really struck me, and I guess I hadn't, you know, I think about all the ways in which starvation breaks bodies, breaks spirits, breaks, you know, hospital systems, the healthcare system, but even just something as simple as that we take for granted, I actually had not even thought about.
It breaks the bodies and the psyche, and unfortunately for years to come this will not be corrected as soon as food is provided. We know from the Minnesota semi-starvation experiment that it took people a few years to recover from the physical, bodily, and psychological consequences of starvation. In other cases of starvation in China and in Ireland, we know that this experience of starvation, it passes from one generation to another. There will be a special relationship to food, to hoarding, to other people, the competition with other people, and the mistrust. So it's a very damaging experience, and I don't think that those who object to the starvation in Gaza, they keep talking about the impact on the bodies of children and the most vulnerable, but they don't understand.
About.
So what we learn from previous experiences, like the Minnesota semi-starvation experiment, is that the effects of starvation will not end as soon as we restore food and normal nutrition to people. The physical and psychological effects will last for a few years after the restoration of normal food. And from other experiences of starvation, like in China and Ireland, we know that the experience of starvation has psychological effects that are cross-generational. They go from one generation and another.
We wanted to, it's a lot to sit with. We want to talk a little bit about gender. And there was something that struck me in reading the book in your chapter, how Israel exploits gender roles to discredit Palestinian female activists, in the sense of reinforcing how colonialism reinforces and exploits patriarchy and gender oppression. And there was one example you gave. I just want to quickly read it. It was a 2018 Facebook post by a spokesperson for the Israeli Occupation Army, which included this message alongside the picture of a female demonstrator from Gaza. The good woman is the honourable woman who takes care of her home and her children and serves as a good example to them. However, the deprived woman who lacks honour, does not take care of these things, acts wildly against her feminine nature and cares not for how she is seen in society. I just thought that was just the most disgusting example of the way in which colonizers exploit patriarchy for their own purposes, and again try and create these divisions, preying on tensions and prejudices and structural gendered oppression within society to their advantage, sowing that discord. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, this post was made by Avichai Adroy, if I remember well. And there are many ways in which there is a manipulation of certain concepts that permit the neutralization of 50% of the Palestinian people. Like if we say that it is not appropriate, it's not suitable, if the Palestinian community internalizes this image that it is not appropriate for women to be a part of the resistance. This means that 50% of the Palestinian population will be passive. So it serves the occupation. But I'm reminded of another example. In the West, they talk about the honor killing, and it's usually attributed to people who come from a Muslim culture. And unfortunately, that some nations internalized this term, honor killing, and they think that it is related to the religion because they have not done the de-ideologization or the deconstruction of that accusation, that characterization. Honor killing comes from the British Mandate. And usually it is present in countries that were occupied by the British. And it was a way to minimize the responsibility of a man killing a woman because they don't care about it. Even when the British Mandate left the country, it became acceptable. They created a term that makes the crime look less ugly. And we think that this is part of our culture and who we are. I want to give an example also from the Palestinian community in 48. Feminicide is higher than everywhere else in Palestine and much higher than in the Israeli Jewish community. Why? Because there are no consequences. Why no consequences? Because the ruling government is the Israeli government, and they don't care.
It's like a eugenics logic.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, let them just kill each other off.
Yes.
Yeah, they let it happen. They don't bother to investigate and to stop.
And
usually the ones who do it are people who armed with the permission of Israelis. They let it be. They are gangsters. And usually they are people who are humiliated in their reaction with the Israelis, and they take it on easier victims in the community. So what I want to say in giving examples like that is the necessity that we do the liberation of the mind hand in hand when we talk about the liberation, like our striving for the liberation of the mind should go parallel with our striving for the liberation of the land.
Yes.
Because I worry about a liberated Palestine when we have not done all of this necessary work where we liberate people from the internalization of inferiority, from the copying of the behaviors of the occupied. So we need to do this work now. And this is part of our liberation project. And this is the part that is usually forgotten, or we don't prioritize it. We don't give it sufficient attention. And I think my writings and my work, my clinical work in Palestine, and also the work that is less clinical and more with the community, has this objective of contributing to the mental liberation project of the Palestinian people.
You remind me of, there's an incredible Palestinian in settler Canada called Bassam Abdel Nadi. He has a podcast called Preoccupation. And his philosophy is that he wants to create an archive of who we were before Israel, so that there is something there for when we become free, for us to take pride in, to know that we can reclaim our history. And also his whole project and his whole work is based on the inevitability that we will be granted liberation, but who will we be once we get it? And it's just such a beautiful, I think, like act of project of revolutionary love to think. For him, that's his activism and advocacy, and that's his contribution to the liberation movement, thinking about the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I would add to that, I've been thinking a lot about this because, of course, in the context of the struggle and our movements, there are a lot of, conflicts. There's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of lateral violence. And so for me, a part of what's critical to this liberation struggle is, as you say, the and decolonizing, but say perhaps, the addressing the not just liberating our body, or liberating our mind, liberating our land, but liberating nafs. So sort of like a very holistic approach to liberation philosophy, which I think, as you say, tends to get deprioritized or fall into the wayside, and is also really hard. It's really hard because it means that you have to go against your instinct to cut off parts of yourself. I mean, isn't that what colonization does? It forces people to cut off on both, the colonized and those who are doing the colonizing, to survive, feel like they almost have to cut off parts of themselves. Or is it the other way around?
It is hard, but it is very necessary and not impossible. And actually, when I think of our overarching goal and dream to liberate Palestine, I know that this is not something that that can be achieved easily, or there are many factors that are beyond our influence as individuals that can decide whether we see a free Palestine in our lifetime or not. So our responsibility is to keep striving for the liberation. And while we are doing that, we liberate ourselves. We liberate the nafs.
Yes.
If you are working for a liberation project while maintaining moral stance as you do this, I think the byproduct of that pathway that you are taking is the liberation of the nafs. And this is how we get satisfaction out of our work for liberation.
Yes.
If we bind our satisfaction by achieving the liberation of the Palestinian land, there will be a lot of disappointment. But if we know that this is the path that we are taking, and while doing so, this is helping us, this is liberating us, we act as free people in our efforts for liberation, I think this is our immediate reward.
So we say, Dr. Samah, freeing Palestine is freeing us all and bringing us closer to that. And I love that quote, and it buoys me on the hard days. You, Dr. Samah, you write about, very movingly, about children and this notion of inherited trauma. What would you say to mental health professionals, and what do you wish they understood more about working with children in war zones? And I guess I ask this because, there's a quote, you write about a boy, rather, who refused to cry, seeing even his tears as a form of resistance. So how do you hold space for young people who are turned into, children, and who are children, but also turned into freedom fighters in this context?
Okay, first let me start with the statistics. When we talk about children in Palestine, we are talking about a majority of the Palestinian population. 1/3 of the Palestinian population are schoolers, people who go to school. So, and they are the growing brains can be most affected by distress and psychological pain and trauma, because they have less defense mechanisms, and because their ability to make sense of the reality is less. Also, their ability to express in language is less than adults. The experiences children are exposed to in Gaza are exceptional. I know everywhere in the world the well-being of children and child mental health depends to a great extent on their protection.
Yeah.
Now there is no room, there is no possibility to protect children in Gaza. We don't have institutional capacity. We see parents losing their agency as protectors. So this is an extreme, unprecedented situation. The latest assaults in Gaza created 40,000 orphan children, 40,000 orphan children, and they had more than 120 previously. There are many children, thousands, with no surviving adult to take care of them. And at the same time, we see children who are not necessarily orphans, but their parents are absent psychologically.
Yes.
Because they are traumatized, because they are amputees, because they are separated by displacement. They became parentified, taking on their shoulders responsibilities that are not suitable for them. They are suitable for adults, and even for adults, they are extreme. So this is a complete attack on the Palestinian future generations, not on the Palestinians now only. What would be the response to that? We don't have any perfect response. This just tells us something about the urgency to stop the attack and to impose ceasefire and to inject life in Gaza. The most important elements are the health system and the educational system. I know from other experiences that the change in the routine of a child can be a source of distress. Only the change in the routine. Imagine we're talking about something very, very extreme now.
Yes.
There are also resources that are important in our society. The system of kafala is can provide support to many children in dire need, and kafala should not be understood as only giving money.
Can you explain
for
that to the audience?
The sponsorship of a child. I don't know the
I think
exact English. Yeah, maybe sponsorship, but it's not only the financial sponsorship; it's the care.
Yes, it's not adoption, but
it's not adoption, because adoption will confuse relationships.
Yes.
So it's not adoption; it is financial sponsorship and psychosocial care that you provide to children. And I think that we will find many people within the Palestinian community in Jerusalem, the West Bank, 48, in the diaspora, and many other non-Muslims, many other Muslims and Arabs, non-Palestinians, would like to participate in taking care of the most affected in Gaza. But all of these processes are now interrupted because ceasefire is not enforced, and it is difficult to assess the needs and start working for a solution. So, I see that the impact is huge, but there are opportunities to help.
We wanted to explore a bit with you about parenting during occupation. I don't even think we could approach the topic of parenting in a genocide, but focusing on your work in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, where there is occupation and apartheid. You know, we talk about the rights of children, and you said it yourself, they need psychosocial health, they need routine, stability, security and protection. But I think we also forget that parenting, just being a parent is hard enough. You know, you have to have emotional regulation. How do you, in your clinical work, address that? The role of parenting when parents are living through oppression, through occupation and apartheid, how is it trickling down into family relationships and dynamics?
Well, I think the discussion about parenting is very relevant to genocide. And I work with people from the West Bank and Jerusalem now. And I hear them talking about their sense of loss of agency in reaction to the images and the reality that comes from Gaza. I received young women who just gave birth or who are pregnant, who express anticipatory grief.
Yes.
And who feel regret and guilt because they are bringing vulnerable beings to this world. And I have to say that also this is one of the ripple effects of the trauma that is taking place in the colonial trauma that is taking place in Gaza now. The Palestinians have been targeted in their reproductivity. Israeli literature referred to the high fertility rate of Palestinian women as demographic bomb repeatedly. And one of the first medical structures that were bombarded in Gaza was the fertility lab. In 2014, it was discovered that the Israeli medical system gives Provera depot injections.
Sterilization?
It's like a contraceptive, but long term, without informed consent to the Bedouin women. So I think that the Palestinians are targeted in their reproductivity. And this is deliberate. This is by plan. Any colonization is interested in empty land. And is interested in minimizing the number of human beings from the colonized population on this land. And if they don't manage to kill all of us, at least they want people who lose their agency, traumatized. They become helpless in reaction to the severe consequences that we observe in Gaza. And I think Palestinians are aware of this plan. So in my encounter with mothers in the clinic, they bring the two perspectives. Some express fear about bringing children, and those are not, I wouldn't pathologize their experience and their assessment. And some think that in resistance to this wish to annihilate us and to exterminate us, I want to bring a child to this life. And those are not naive ones also. And I think we should make room for everyone to make a choice that is suitable for their life conditions and suitable for their psychological reaction to these immense circumstances that are taking place in Palestine.
And I think that ability to make a choice, even when you feel like you're in very limited circumstances, is what helps them reclaim that agency in a sense, or keep it, and that dignity, one would imagine. Dr. Samah, you write from and you speak from, within the very context that you're analyzing. And, I wanted to ask you, how does proximity to such trauma shape both the therapeutic and the writing processes for you? And I'm especially interested because, I guess I want to understand, is this act of bearing witness, in the very least, let's call it that, act of bearing witness, is that an antidote to this death-making machine which operates at every level possible, from food to fertility, as you've spoken about? Is it an antidote to the very deliberate we make life, but this is Israel and the Zionist entity is insistent upon our death and on achieving that annihilation through a strategy of necropolitics, right? So that you have alluded to in your countless examples, is what you do an antidote to that?
Can I add something to that to
Yes.
expand the question, because it links to
Because the
something
question
you
was
meant.
very small already.
Yeah, but it links to what you said before when you started, which is that you're not just a clinician. Like, you don't just do the clinical work. You expand your work beyond that to the liberation movement. So you're not just a healer, you're a witness as well.
Of course.
Which reminded me of Basil al-Araj, the revolutionary, whose words about being an engaged intellectual. So it got me thinking about you being the engaged clinician, the engaged psychiatrist. I think it's something very much about being Palestinian.
Well, I think that there is an overlap between my understanding of liberation psychology
Yes.
concepts and also having Islamic ethics. So from the point of view of liberation psychology, bearing witness is an intervention in times of oppression, when you observe how the power structure crushes individuals. So you support them, you try to minimize their pain, and you bear witness to their reality. And you in the application, we document about it, we report, we engage in advocacy. This is the practices of bearing witness at a professional level. From the point of view of Islamic ethics, there is a very clear verses وَلَا تَكْتُمُ الشَّهَادَةِ that tells us that we should not conceal testimony. Also, there is another concept from liberation psychology that makes sense of testimonies. Testimonio. It explains how the defeated, oppressed population usually have a problem writing their history. The history is written by the powerful, and it masks and deletes and erases the micro stories and the experiences of the oppressed people. In reaction to that, in Latin America, they encouraged the telling the story of the person in public. Little by little, you can compose the stories in these micro stories like small pieces of the puzzle that will make people retrieve their erased history. So we have that responsibility in Palestine also, to put together the small pieces of the micro personal stories of individual and compose the history from the point of view of the oppressed in opposition to the dominant narrative of history. We have this responsibility. So my work brings me very close from the most intimate and painful stories of people. I realized this when I worked as a medical doctor, and more when I worked as a psychiatrist and psychotherapist. So I am in a special place of observing and sometimes helping people find words for the unspeakable experiences. And I think that these stories are important and should be told, and conclusions from these stories should help us generate knowledge and inform us about generating appropriate responses to our very special, troubled, but yet important reality.
Can I just ask very quickly, you sparked something for me. You would be aware of the truth and reconciliation sort of committees or processes that have taken place in various contexts, including...
South Africa.
Yeah, exactly right. And so for all their limitations in practice, I'm an international, my background is in international law and human rights, and I always thought, I think about what is one way for us in the future to sort of hold accountable and to, reconcile all of these grave injustices that we're facing right now, even if at this point in time with a live genocide it feels futile and, not our job in a sense. I am interested in if you've given that any thought based on what you've just said, and whether there's room, again, despite its limitations, for something like that, or if you've got any sort of more radical ideas.
My interest in the truth and reconciliation and other transformative processes is that it's part of my commitment to the idea that we should not replicate the tools. We should not use or replicate the tools and strategies of the occupied. So I am in support of several ideas that can lead to transformative justice.
Yes.
Now, the way my understanding of how the Truth and Reconciliation committees were conducted in South Africa, they resulted in a feeling of injustice for the black people who suffered a lot already. When there was a call for the Truth and Reconciliation, more black people were ready to come and report on the bad things that they did than the white people. So it can be distorted when put into practice. It was tried in Colombia as well, and something similar to that was tried, like a musalaha, like a kind of reconciliation effort was tried in Tunisia following the fall of Zayn al-Abidin Ben Ali.
And if I can just add very quickly, there's reconciliation processes here in this colony, but they are regarded as quite problematic and again, written by the colonizer. So just for added context.
Yeah. But as a preemptive step, because we're very far from talking about reconciliation and transformative justice in relation to the Palestinian-Israeli relationship. I want to say that a lot of work needs to be done within Palestinians, for Palestinians. I think that we have not studied profoundly the fratricide and the inner fighting between Palestinians, which can be expressed very lightly in the divide between solidarity groups and different Palestinian fragmented communities. And to a larger extent, it can take a more violent form that results in Palestinians killing Palestinians. And we had black chapters of that history in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Gaza 2006, and more recently in Jenin, Tulkarem, and other refugee camps. It's difficult to talk about this part of history because it feels like domestic violence. And also, I think that we all fear that if we talk about it now, it will perplex the international solidarity with the Palestinian people, who expect us to be prophets and angels in order to support, in order to support us.
That's right, conditional.
But I think this work is very urgent. It's necessary and needs to be done, and we should strive to create pluralistic representation of the Palestinian people. Part of our challenges on the way to liberation is that the official representation of the Palestinians has rarely represented the aspiration of our people. So here again, we can borrow something from the ideas of liberation psychology, which is the dialogue between the oppressed. I think we need to have our inner dialogue, connect with each other, learn how to work across the divide, avoid a discourse that emphasizes absolute purity and belittles others. This is an important element and component of our journey for liberation. And if we don't do this work, we will pay the price sooner or later. This will also pave the way for a healthy society once the occupation is over.
You actually mentioned it in another talk that the British were absolutely the best examples of how to divide and conquer, and that's left its legacy until today. Speaking about, it fits nicely with what we wanted to ask you about next, which is about decolonized mental health models and what Palestinian healing practices and community-based interventions, which don't align with, traditional Western concepts and frameworks, look like. What does liberation and mental health look like from a Palestinian perspective?
I think first we need to understand that not everyone who is crushed by political violence becomes sick. The assumption that everyone becomes sick is a wrong one. And we saw examples from Gaza of doctors and journalists and community leaders who are examples of post-traumatic growth and advanced development. We need also to take care of the broken fabric, the damaged fabric in reaction to trauma. This will not be treated in individual therapy. We might provide remedy if we allow people do their community healing activities in listening groups, in dialoguing with each other, in healing circles. So that's also an approach that is usually dismissed by international NGOs, and we need to push back to make it a norm in Palestine. It is also very relevant from the point of view of cost effectiveness. There is no way that we put every Palestinian on a therapy chair. We need to help people whose agency was targeted and damaged to regain their agency and to move from victimhood to witnesshood, to become protagonists of their own story. And this should not necessarily be done in the style of psychotherapy, of individual psychotherapeutic intervention. We can be creative and obtain many community initiatives that help people find a purpose and build belongings again and find a way to transform their story from absolute victimhood to witnesshood and to become protagonists. So I think that the experience in Palestine can be revolutionary in the way in which we provide healing and support for the affected community. And I don't deny that some people will need individual therapy, but we should not start with the assumption that everyone becomes sick and everyone needs therapy. I think those will remain to be a minority of people. And we should trust the capacity of the community to heal itself. The people in Palestine are wounded, they are not crazy or mad. And I think that the reports and the international surveys that are being conducted in Palestine, yesterday one of them was published, saying that 1 million child in Gaza suffer from PTSD. This contributes to a false image that shows Palestinians as suffering from psychological morbidity.
Dr. Samah, building on that, you write, we Palestinians do not suffer, we resist suffering becoming our sole story. This is something that has actually come up with a lot of the Palestinians that we've had in previous episodes. The fact that their resistance seems to be defined, their whole being is defined solely or viewed through the lens of trauma, grief, victimhood, and that they aren't given the space to reclaim being the protagonist of their own story. And the fact that they are more than their pain and their grief. So are you able to tell us a little bit more about that and why you wrote that? And also I'm wondering, you mentioned something about a kite story to me the last time we met, and I'm wondering if that fits in here, and it's fine if it doesn't, but if that, because I really wanted to hear it.
First, let me try to answer the first part of your question. In a very simple way, I see that all what the Israelis are doing is an attempt to make us shadows of human beings, lose their agency. You can survive on the Palestinian territories if you give up your Palestinianity, if you give up your belonging to your nation, if you become confused about your identity. You can survive physically. And maybe you can have a good salary and have a car, have a home. But all the time while making big compromise on who you are and your agency.
The best Palestinian is either a dead Palestinian or an ex-one, as they say, ex-Palestinian or un-Palestinian.
Yeah. So I see health and resistance to the occupation as an expression of agency and belonging to the people and clarity about who you are and your identity. That's why I write about becoming a protagonist of your own story, because this is exactly what they don't want us to be. And they want to tell the story from the point of view of the colonizer, where I keep bringing the example of Robinson Crusoe. And I keep imagining what would be the story if it is written from the point of view of Friday.
Yes.
The man who was given the name by Robinson Crusoe because he found him on a Friday. So I think that telling your own story, writing it, influencing the events in it, is an act of liberation. This is my view for liberation. And also it's an act of health and mental health. So I see the overlap between the two of them. Now, the kite's story. Let me try to say that briefly. We observed children, and especially one child from An al-Mawasi, trying to fly his kite in juxtaposition to drones. His legs were stuck in the mud, but he was trying to move somewhere with the kite. And that was impressive. And I remember when the wall of separation was built in the West Bank, it separated cousins.
Yes.
And family members and playmates. And they started to communicate with each other with kites above the 8-meter wall. There is the song of Marcel Khalife, الطفل والطيارة, the boy and the kite. There is the story of Tinnin Jinin, a flying dragon above, Tinnin Beit Lahem, a flying dragon above Beit Lahem. And also the theme of ascension and flying comes from the history of our land. ascension after
The prophets.
crucifixion,
Yes.
and also al-Isra wal-Mi'raj,
Yes.
following the Aam al-Huzn, the year of sorrow. So
Oh my goodness.
in response to all these symbols,
Yes.
we created this intervention which combines elements from group therapy, play therapy, the expression of agency for kids who are supposed to fight with each other when they stand in the line for food. Now they gather, we give them basic material to create a kite with with white paper. They project their feelings with the colors, with the words that they write, the drawings that they make on the white paper. Then they go fly it. It's a collective work, collective activity. And then they come back. And we give them a time to reflect on the experience. And we ask them questions that facilitate for them to speak about the reality. So we ask questions like, who did you want this kite to reach? What message did you send with it? Who was addressed by this message? So it facilitates for children to speak about loss, destruction, hopes for the future. And it is an encounter between therapists or trained educators and children who had a background of trauma and loss. Through this encounter, over one day, we can identify the ones who need further help. So we don't stem from the assumption that every child who had these experiences need therapy. Through this encounter, we provide support, we give them a chance to talk, and we can identify the ones who need further help. So it's like a screening tool for us. It's a therapeutic intervention, but also a screening tool. And we managed to publish it in a psychoanalytic journal, and it got a lot of attention. And then we manualized it. We wrote it in Arabic, published it with Tamer Educational Institute, and it was implemented by colleagues in refugee camps in Jordan and with the victims of war in Lebanon, and also with the evacuated people from Gaza in Italy. So we are glad that it resonates, it makes sense to some therapists, and they are implementing it.
We could listen to you all day, honestly. One more question. You write, resistance has a humanizing influence. It is perceived by Palestinians as a legitimate human right and a moral duty. How do you see resistance as a psychological necessity and not just a political strategy for Palestinians?
Because it's an expression of agency. And
Is agency central to our humanity?
Yes, yes. This is an important difference between human beings and other creatures. It is because of this agency that we have more responsibilities. And it is because of this agency that we can achieve, have a will, realize our objectives. And a colonized person is objectified. There is a denial of our subjectivity and of our agency. And the resistance is one way to regain this agency. It is every colonization assumes the subhumanity of the colonized. And without resistance, there is approval from the colonized on their subhumanity. Moments of resistance allow the colonized to stand up and regain their sense of humanity. Whether this is being done by individuals in the name of the group, or if it is done by everyone. Now, the discussion about resistance is another one. Resistance is a wide spectrum with many options. And everyone can decide what is suitable for him as a mode of resistance. But I think it is an important psychological activity that helps us regain our full humanity that was invaded and attacked by the event of colonization.
Yes.
And Palestinians need to talk more about this. And I think one important reason why this reality, the occupation of Palestine, has been protracted and it took so long, is that the psychological aspects of it have always been ignored. And ignored by us, by the Palestinians themselves, and also ignored in any peace negotiations.
Yes.
Peace will never be achieved simply by agreement between the big powers. There will always be a child, an adolescent in Palestine who will revolt against the agreement that did not calculate for his psychological well-being.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. So without taking into consideration the psychological reality and the impact on people, I don't think any peace will be imposed on Palestinians.
They should have sent the teenagers to Oslo. That would have looked very different.
Just take them into consideration,
Yes.
take them in the minds of the negotiators.
Particularly, as you said, when the majority are children. So it's a genocide on children. It's an occupation and apartheid on children.
Yeah,
In the future.
And we know that even if now there will be a big attack on Palestinians and silence will be imposed for a few years, in a few years the little ones of today will react to their experience.
Dr. Samah, we like to do a little bit of a, let's call it a mini healing circle of our own, and ask our guests these questions. Randa, would you like to first one?
Yeah, the first one is words we live by. Is there a quote or a poem or verse or piece of writing that is particularly anchoring for you?
I like a lot Tamim al-Barghouti. I think he's a genius poet and an engaged poet. And I think we should take our time to understand the words and the messages he sends to the Palestinian people.
Dr. Samah, what is something that you are no longer apologizing for as, as an Arab, as someone who is Palestinian, and speaking on Palestine, as a Muslim, something that you're no longer apologizing for?
I never apologized for the resistance of the Palestinian people, and I will never apologize for that. I think it is important psychologically, and yet I tell the Palestinian people that we need to have more conversation about what is appropriate at which times.
Yes.
Now, our third question comes with a disclaimer, because there's a line in your book that says suggesting self-care for people under a genocide is not a good idea. And our question is, if you had an anti-colonial care package, what would you put in it at this time?
Collective care. Collective care. And through collective care, we will take care of each other, and we can take care of ourselves while doing collective care with other people as well.
SubhanAllah.
Thank you so much. It's just been such a profound honor to listen to you.
Thank you very much. If I may add something,
Yes,
if
of
you
course.
allow me to say something. I've been going to different parts of the world, interacting with solidarity movements, invited usually by solidarity movements. And usually I see Palestinians coming as visitors to these encounters. I very much liked here that the Palestinians are leading the movement. They are taking active role. So congratulations on what you're doing here.
Thank you, Dr. Samah, and not from a lack of them trying to silence and sideline us, but we're pretty persistent that we deserve to have self-determination and sovereignty at least over our own stories, and that is actually exactly why we decided to host or sort of create Two Pals in a Pod. So thank you very much.
Thank you.